So, folks, this time it's been a fortnight between guests. You had me, unfortunately, last week on my own, but I'm sure that was helpful. But the thing is that I've been waiting for a long, long time for our next guest to grace the time with us. And he said he would a long, long time ago, but he's an extraordinarily busy man. And as you all know, we've been very, very, very fortunate to have attracted a fair number of the, if you like, the A-listers on the sort of world of keto and low carb. We've had Professor Tim Noakes, of course. We've had Dr. Eric Westman. We've had Ivor Cummings. We've had even Jimmy Moore. And of course, a woman that this man might have heard of called Belinda Fettke, who blew us all away only a few weeks ago. But tonight, we have an extraordinary guest, an amazing man with an amazing story, Dr. Gary Fettke, all the way down there in Tasmania. So Gary, welcome to our little thing we do on a Wednesday night. Thanks for joining us.
Well, I don't know if that's really an A-list. I mean, the last speaker you mentioned is an A+, okay?
I think she's the star of the show now, that's for certain, yeah.
Well, she always has been.
Yes, I can imagine.
So if as long as you keep her up there on that, we've only been together for 40 years recently.
Well done. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, she's a keeper. I've scored above myself.
I think you have, son.
I have. Those other rat bags I do know all very well, but they're good. We've all become good friends.
I can only imagine.
And that's a den of thieves, I suppose, but nonetheless, that's it's an honor guard.
You're all an inspiration to me. I've put about maybe 2,500 hours in to listen to podcasts. I listen to them walking my dog, 2 or 3 times a day, and I people know this about me. I'm a kind of audio thinker rather than a visual or a kinesthetic kind of guy. Mm-hmm. And when I hear a voice, it's tuning to the voice. And when you hear Professor Tim Noakes talk or Dr. Eric Westman, you just get this sense of trust in their voice. That it's just there. And yours has got that too. And I have the privilege of listening to a number of podcasts, but this is a real treat for us. And
I think because I know all these people, and so I know them beyond their podcasts.
Yes, of course.
And I don't know how many of those stories I should tell you about them, but it's genuine. If you actually, we're all just genuinely seeing the results. There's no BS.
No.
I keep talking about, my talks are largely about biochemistry and making it so people can understand. And Belinda's talks about the history. Yeah. And you can't make up biochemistry. You can't make up history.
No.
You can make up your interpretation of it. Yeah. And once you see the results of low carb keto, and I hope your dog's running keto as well.
Yes, of course. Absolutely, yeah.
Then you can't unsee them. And every day at work, every day on social media, every day in the community, you see the results of actually people reducing their sugars, their carbs, processed food, and they are getting better.
Yeah.
Without drugs. And so therefore, if you're around genuine people, it's a good spot.
Absolutely. And I mean, if I can take you back a little bit to how you got into being an orthopedic surgeon. I mean, one of the things I keep saying when I meet people like you on behalf of the group is you all seem like really genuine people who went into the medical world because you genuinely wanted to care, you genuinely wanted to help cure people, let's say. And that's pretty obvious with all of you guys that you haven't lost that. Sometimes I wonder about other things that are going on. And as someone called it recently in one of the podcasts, I think it was on the Low Carb MD podcast, someone called it the medical industrial complex. It's a quite interesting idea. But to hear guys like yourself who really got into it and seem to be still in it for the right reasons. It'd be nice to hear your backstory a little bit for the guys, and then obviously the big story over the.
I don't call it a medical health system. I call it a sickness industry.
Of course, yeah.
And it's very cynical way, it's not in our interest to change it too much because it changes the whole picture for everyone employed in it.
Yeah.
Most importantly, it would mean that admitting that what we've been doing is wrong and harmful.
Yeah.
And that's called pride. And the vast majority of people hate admitting they've been wrong.
Yeah.
And the medical profession's particularly bad at saying sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's, for me, I used to be the cake judge at the hospital, so that's part of the background. So I wouldn't take your plaster off. If you were a kid with a broken arm, I would say, look, they'd say, how long's the plaster on for? And say, look, it's on for 6 weeks if you bring me a chocolate cake, or 8 if you don't. So yeah, I was open bribery for many, many years, and the cake judge.
Yes.
And now I openly admit that I'm sorry I was poisoning everyone. And so, you're sort of asked by way of background history. My first exposure to medicine was, personally, I broke 9 bones as a kid, but only 7 of them were mine. So I used to play sport pretty aggressively. I had a bit of exposure to orthopedic surgery. Look, long and short, my mum died when I was 16. There was a misdiagnosis by an orthopedic surgeon, and she had a bit of a sore knee, and he didn't do an X-ray. And then 2 months later, she broke a femur with a cancer in there. And then 3 months later, she was dead. So that was, that's right in my formative last year of school.
Yeah. Yeah.
The surgeon who looked after her ended up being one of my mentors. And I worked for him on and off for a few years, and he supported my application to the training program. And look, I'm just, as Belinda and I, we're just a couple of state school kids.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
with a bit of a passion,
Yep.
but we've come from the grassroots, and we're well intentioned, and we want to do the right thing. So that, that's how I probably got into medicine.
Right.
At high school, I thought, okay, I had an interest in science, and I had an interest in sport because and that sort of led me down the path of medicine.
Yeah.
That sports medicine side sort of led me down the path of orthopedics on top of that background history. And I often remind doctors of what doctor means. Do you know what the Latin of doctor means?
Yeah.
Don't worry, most doctors don't know either. It means to teach.
Seriously? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not to care for or heal or make money or operate or anything like that. It's like you get a PhD, your doctorate
Yeah, of
is
course.
actually to teach.
Yes.
And so once you understand that, I'm actually now doing the proper stuff in life. I'm now a doctor.
Yeah.
And the operating, pays for that process.
Yeah.
And so, I can go to work and, see a certain number of people per day. I can only operate on a certain number per day. Yet with social media, I can reach tens of thousands of people a day.
Yeah.
And I often say that to patients, like whilst you're listening to me now for the next 20 minutes,
Yeah.
there have been, 5,000 people have had a little listen to, a bit of the conversation that we're having.
Yeah.
And so that comes with it responsibility, and it's no different to operating. And so, I'm often considered to be controversial, but I'd like to think that it's always factual.
Yeah. And were you always sort of an outlier kind of thing, or, a bit of a rebel in the thing, or would you just mainstream, or is this something you just developed obviously over the recent history?
It's always far more interesting outside of the box than inside it. I wrote a book a few years ago. I'll send you a copy. Yeah.
Okay.
And called Inversion: One Man's Answer for World Peace and Global Health.
Oh, wow. That would be fantastic.
By looking at things from the exact opposite direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, and looking at without going into it in great detail, but effectively, if you turn everything upside down and look at it from the exact opposite, you get a completely different perspective.
Indeed. Yeah.
And if you actually apply that to world peace and global health, that's where, And that's what I've always done that. It's always been a more interesting conversation. If someone says black, I'll say white.
Right.
I might agree with them, but I want to hear them justify their position.
Yeah.
And when you find out how much stuff we do in life, not just medicine, but life, is completely unfounded and based on opinion, based on science and practicality and evidence, and therefore, self-interest or vested interest, and that's really what nutrition's come down to. Belinda's work is, she would see Tim and myself, Eric, Jason, Jimmy, all talking about the science, going blue in the face, and nobody's listening, and we're getting results, putting people's diabetes into remission, people getting healthier, feeling better, living longer, reversing disease. And she'd go, look, you guys are losing the plot here. You're actually on the right track. She never said she wanted to understand the biochemistry. She didn't want it because she's a nurse by original trade. So she delved down those paths of the vested interest. So and when the vested interests are there protecting themselves, that's the game. So we're all in the game now because I actually understand the science.
Yes.
But more importantly, understand the vested interests that are actually pushing back against the message. I did a talk, where are we now, 2019, it's on YouTube, called The Failure of Medical Education. I gave that to the national body of medical students here in Australia at their annual general meeting. And it's been turned into YouTube and goes beyond that. But when you recognize that our medical education has been completely corrupted by the pharmaceutical industry, and it's no surprise there, but I can actually track it back to the 1910, the Flexner report. And it was essentially, let's start medicating and operating rather than taking holistic care out. And nutritional education goes back to 1917, October 23, when it was actually started by the processed food industry. In fact, arguably John Harvey Kellogg's protege, and then the whole. So when you realize your textbooks of medicine have been written by the pharmaceutical industry, and you realize your textbooks of nutrition have been written by the processed food industry, that becomes generational education. Which becomes like, nobody wants to, you might want to question your teachers, but your teachers, you believe that what your teachers, they know. But when you realize that this is now over 100 years of generational miseducation or misinformation, deliberate misinformation, then you can play. And so that's what, where we've come to that very comfortable point. So if anybody comes to me and says, low carb or keto is dangerous, eating real food's dangerous, eating fresh, local, seasonal is dangerous, within generally 5 seconds, but certainly within 5 minutes, I can give Belinda a name, or someone can give Belinda a name, and she'll go, okay, they're working from there. That's where their vested interest is. And everyone's got vested interests. We've all got things that change our way of. But a lot of people actually don't even know that they have a vested interest. That's interesting. Like, you're all welcome. I say, you're welcome to my table, but I'd like to know what hat you're wearing. And so that's, and so it always amuses me when some people don't realize. So if someone's coming to me with a vegan agenda, I go, okay, that's fine, but do you realize where your education's come from? Do you realize that the vegan movement is largely and significantly funded by the processed food industry and religious ideology? If you believe in that, that's fine. But if you actually honestly believe the science arguments, which are, that vegan's good for the planet and it's good for your health, and you can have a lovely supplemented lifestyle, that's fine. You can have that belief, but it's not based on science. It's based on propaganda.
I mean, do you mind if I ask you? I mean, you go into you merge into your career as, you get to the point when you're a orthopedic surgeon, where was it a gradual awareness that came along, but you started to wonder about all of this sort of vested interest actually training doctors, or was it a light bulb moment or something, or were you always just like, I'm in this because I want to help people and do the operations and so on, but there's something fundamentally flawed here, or did it just show up one day? How did it come about where you then want to write books and you then want to get on the stage and then you get sidelined and all that? What happened?
Look, I've been a contrarian. I'll admit that. So 30 years ago, I was one of the very first surgeons in Australia to not operate on smokers for elective surgery.
Wow.
And I gave a paper at that time called "Where There's Smoke, There's Fire." Just sort of when again, the early science was there to say that smoking was bad for health outcomes in surgery.
Yes.
Which we now know.
Yes.
But 30 years ago, people would say, you can't do that. You're a redneck. And so actually, no, the research is there.
Yeah.
I was definitely the first surgeon in Australia to not operate on people, do joint replacements if they were too heavy. And I've had to justify that early on. And I did, I literally got up, look, here's 200 papers that support my position, and here's 3 that support yours. Quite controversial talks in the orthopedic community.
I can imagine.
But the reason I've done that is that whatever we've been doing is not working.
Yeah.
Like the food pyramid, it's not working. We're just having this bit of a Facebook debate flapping around last night. James Mooky's the Australian of the Year has used a couple of my graphs that I've given him, showing that over the last 45 years in the US, and it's good US data, we've increased our grains and fruit and vegetable consumption, and we've decreased our red meat consumption, and we've done all the stuff we're supposed to do. We've gotten fatter and sicker.
Yeah.
And people say you can't, that's because people aren't following the guidelines. Well, we actually have been following the guidelines.
Yeah.
So let's get our heads out of the sand on all this stuff. Now, so where does that come with me? Once you see something, you can't unsee it.
Yeah, I've heard you say this lots of times.
It doesn't matter if it's sport or there's another interesting talk I've just found out. I gave a talk on the best spot to hide something. I gave that talk which is in plain sight, and all this low carb stuff's in plain sight. It's just just open your eyes and you'll see it.
Yeah.
So I've lost slight track of that. So obviously my brain's not functioning fully well. So taking up that contrarian position allows you to justify things.
Yeah.
And in medicine, once you start recognizing, hang on, that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So, let's go back to smoking. It was fine. People were smoking for decades, but over time you realize that this doesn't make sense. But it was still okay to smoke in pubs and smoke in buildings and smoke in the car in the kids and all that. And all of that's now been tossed aside.
Yeah.
We can look at sunlight now, which is an interesting topic. In Australia, we see vitamin D deficiency despite the fact we've got all this sunlight.
Wow.
I think we've gone too far.
Yeah.
With avoiding sun, slip, slop, slap, And in fact, we know there are benefits of sunlight to the human body.
Yeah.
And that sunlight doesn't need to be that high noon sun. But, there's a great, essentially the safe sunlight is that when your shadow is longer than your height.
Right.
And we should be getting exposed to that. So we do get our vitamin D.
Yeah.
Vitamin D synthesis and our ability to have that exposure to sunlight has enormous potential for healing.
Yeah.
And it's not just vitamin D, it's nitric oxide, and it's the production of that apart from the fact that you're out and exercising, all of which have been challenged in the last 12 months with, lockdowns and don't go outside and don't do your exercise and don't get adequate, good food.
Yeah. Yeah. So the inevitable thing, and I'm aware of time because there's so much I want to ask you particularly. Can you tell us about what actually happened, how it ended up where
I was married to Belinda. She's the best looking girl at school, mate.
Yeah, of course, I understand that. But the thing, of course, is okay, you're doing your thing. You're obviously potentially controversial, maybe, but then you're doing things differently with your patients, and you get into bother, didn't you?
Look, I'm passionate.
Yeah.
I've got in my office, my registrars a couple of years ago gave me a toilet brush all painted in gold. Okay, so I've got a golden toilet brush sitting up behind my desk.
Yes.
And whenever I have a difficult patient, I'll actually point them around. I say, my registrars gave me that award because and they said, what have you got a golden toilet brush? And I said, I get to clean up all and you're it,
Yeah.
But in my public hospital work, I used to have my Fridays were called Fettke's effed up fructose-free fungating foot folly Fridays. And I would literally, I don't know what the effed up meant, but nonetheless, that operating list every week would be changed. And I would do the stuff that nobody else wanted to do.
Right.
And I'm very proud of that because if you can do a hip replacement, knee replacement, arthroscopy, all of that, that's all bread and butter stuff. Yeah. But to take on the stuff that no one else wants to do is fun. It's challenging, it's good, stretches yourself, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So for a long time, I ended up starting to get all not all, but the vast majority of diabetic feet, with getting more and more complicated, more and more neuropathy, more and more decaying flesh. And there is a smell to rotting flesh. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's not pretty, but nonetheless, when you actually recognize that, you start thinking, actually, I can't beat this with operating. What's the root cause analysis?
Yeah.
Okay, what's the cause of it? And that's the path I travel with diabetes. Yeah. I had a pituitary tumor requiring some neurosurgery 20 years ago. Chemotherapy, radiotherapy, the whole works. I was on 11 different medications. I had metabolic syndrome. I was hypertensive. I was 22 kilos heavier, 45 pounds of where I am now.
Hard to imagine.
I was still ugly, so that doesn't change.
How did you manage to get that wife then?
Keto doesn't give you good looks. It may keep you good-looking wife, but it doesn't give you good looks. Here's a funny look. So the other day I was chatting to Belinda and I said, I seem to have more hair when I look in the mirror than when I do on camera. Anyway, so look, the long and the short of it, I had my own health journey.
Yeah.
Where I was eating by the dietary guidelines, and I was having a bit of chocolate, but I was exercising as much as I could. But I was getting fatter. I was on medication. I was on chemotherapy. Yeah. So I traveled that path of keto, and that was all sort of in unison with the fact that I was doing more and more diabetic feet. And I went, hang on, this is working for me.
Yeah.
The tumor stuff came as a result metformin's a drug commonly used in diabetes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
2010, 2011, might be 2012. All of a sudden, there started coming out papers related to metformin improving cancer outcomes.
Right.
And then I started reading about that, and I thought, why take a drug to reduce your sugar? Why wouldn't you just have less sugar? Incredibly simple. Yeah. And then that was pretty well the start of my low carb journey. It was partly my story, partly my diabetes patient stories. I started realizing the perils of sugar. Yeah. Started talking about it. Belinda and our daughter, we're traveling in the US, and I can still remember the seat in a cafeteria in Los Angeles in Transit Lounge that they actually said, "Oh, Dad, you should get on Facebook and tell people." And Belinda said, "You've got a strong message. You should get on Facebook." Oh. And then the war started. Because it's different if you've got a celebrity chef or saying sugar's bad. But when an orthopedic surgeon gets onto social media and says, actually, I'm sick and tired of chopping legs off because of it and diabetic feet, I launched a website called nofructose.com based on the biochemistry. Yeah. And within 48 hours, the sugar industry were onto me.
Jeez. That
then continued on. I mean, I was incredibly naive. I just had a message, let's reduce sugar. It'll help people's outcome. I then, 2013, 2014, developed what's called the nutritional model of modern disease. I'm proud of that. I put together other people's pieces of jigsaw. Were effectively the combination, which is now being talked about, the combination of sugar, fructose, and excess carbohydrate combined with polyunsaturated seed oils creates inflammation in the body and effectively all modern disease.
Yeah.
And there's more and more work coming along to support that now. But that jigsaw puzzle, I can still remember April 2014, there were 4 of us around the world, and I said, putting little bits of jigsaw puzzle together. I went, I've got that. Thanks, guys. Here it is. What do you think?
Yeah.
And then put together that talk.
Yeah.
That ended up upsetting, and the same time frame in the hospital, I'm trying to make a difference. The long and the short of it, to cut it in a nutshell, is that the food industry, particularly the cereal industry here in Australia, we've got their internal documentation saying that cereal sales are down in Australia and New Zealand. The concepts of low carb and paleo are at fault. These 7 people are to be targeted.
Seriously? Wow.
Of which I was the only doctor on that list. There are other celebrities on that one, but I'm the only doctor on that list for active defence. So I was deliberately targeted. There were then articles. The chief executive officer of the Dietitians Association, who were in a contractual agreement with the cereal industry, then approached my hospital saying for me to be silenced. More pressure was put on. Ultimately, I was thrown to the medical board. I was considered, I was investigated for being dangerous. The expert witness that the medical board employed was working for the cereal industry at the time. He was an eminent professor, but he was completely paid by the cereal industry.
Yeah.
He was employed by them and had been for 20 years, and he didn't declare any of that.
Jeez.
Sorry, I lie. For 15 years. 15. I don't want to be. Let's get factual. So for 15 years, he was in direct employment. His funding, his personal employment, his textbooks were actually being paid for by the industry. And the medical board said, no, you're dangerous. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to advise your patients to avoid sugar. I know it sounds ridiculous, but this went on for years.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I went through 3 Senate inquiries looking into this, the APRA Medical Board, obesity in Australia. Took another couple of years, and both Tim Noakes and myself, Tim was in the same mix-up, and he'd been reported by dietitians in South Africa. That's right. Annika Dahlqvist, same thing in Sweden in the past. And subsequent to that, they've tried the same rule book in Canada. They've tried it in the UK, tried it again in Australia. And we've been able to help those people get off, even before it got escalated. Yeah. So that took a long journey. And along the way, Belinda said, look, your science is right. You can see the results. Here, the people are getting better. What are the vested interests? And so that's, as a result, that's where we're at now.
Yeah.
And so we actually, and the other thing is, last year, I ticked everything on the bucket list.
Did you? Yeah.
And Belinda, about early last year, a few months after me, she ticked everything on the bucket list. Our children are, good people. We've got grandchildren who are healthy.
Yeah.
We care so much we don't care anymore.
Yeah.
You can't hurt us. You've done it financially. You've done it spiritually. You've done it publicly. We've come through that.
Yeah.
It's a good test of love and marriage.
I can imagine. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's also, I have respect for Belinda. She has respect for me. We actually stand up, and we're standing up for the little guy. And that may sound...
No.
And people say, this is one thing is I don't do this for the money.
No.
I don't have a book to sell. I wrote Inversion. That's about world peace and global health. That's years ago. And I actually don't take the funds from that. If any sales of that go elsewhere. Yeah. And people, we've asked, can you endorse this? Can you endorse that? And I said, no, I don't want money.
No.
The moment I want money, if money comes, and I like for Tim Noakes, he's got the Noakes Foundation. He doesn't want the money. No. He wants the money to go into this as an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
I'd like my money back from those.
Yes.
The medical board, the Dietitians Association, the food industry who have screwed me over. Yeah. I'd like that back. That's my retirement fund. but I don't want to receive money for actually doing this.
No, it's wonderful.
I'll send you an account afterwards, by the way.
So, you clearly must have been getting results that were upsetting people, not just the fact that you were outspoken, but were patients turning round? Were they backing out of type 2, or were they not having to get foot cut off? What was going on that was...
The stories are all there.
Yeah.
You know, they call N equals 1. You know, I see diabetic foot ulcers start to improve after they haven't changed for months. You know, you see it within days. People's cognition, their ability to think improves when their diabetes control comes down. Their medications are reduced. You know, this work's now being replicated. Verta Health, David Unwin, you know, the stuff's there. You literally, you know, I got into trouble. You can actually turn diabetes around. If you've got type 2 diabetes and you want to get rid of your diabetes, I can get rid of it in 12 hours for you.
12 hours.
Yeah, I put a CGM on your arm. I show you what to eat, what not to eat, what food does to you, and you have gotten rid, like diabetes, type 2 diabetes. In fact, all diabetes is the inability to handle the glucose load that you present the body with.
Yes.
If you don't eat glucose, you don't have diabetes, and you don't need the medication to control it. Or in type 1, you need a lot less.
Yeah.
I finished a talk, I did a talk last week for Low Carb USA, which I think it's still behind a paywall at the moment, but will ultimately come out. Yeah. And I'm looking at carbohydrate, the dose is the poison.
Yeah.
I found it really interesting to put it together because I found, and I showed, I think successfully, that the dose that is seen by the body as toxic that needs to be managed is 1 teaspoon. 1 teaspoon of glucose, 1 teaspoon of fructose. In fact, it's even probably half a teaspoon of fructose. 1 teaspoon of glucose is seen by the body as being harmful, and the body does everything in its capacity to get it out of the bloodstream.
Yeah.
Insulin, fat storage. Yeah. Insulin's a hormone that is involved in fat storage, tumor growth, and inflammation.
Yeah.
So now that I know that stuff, and I've done that, I've written a chapter for a textbook being put together by Tim Noakes on the musculoskeletal chapter. I'm very happy about that. Yeah. Once I've seen the results, once I can read the literature, the science, the biochemistry that backs up what I'm seeing, what we're talking about, yeah. I can't not tell my patients about it. Yeah. I can't not tell you about it. No. So I saw 2 blokes this week that 3 months ago, before Christmas, I said, look, they both had bare bone in their knees, osteoarthritis, yeah. which is now an inflammatory condition tied up again with insulin resistance, yeah. not just wear and tear. I said, go low carb, come and see me after Christmas. We'll talk about doing a knee replacement. Yeah. Both of them came in. They'd lost very little weight, you know, a pound or 2, half a kilo. Yeah. But they'd both lost their knee pain. Yeah. So they had a reduction in their pain and their inflammation before they actually lost weight. Yeah. So those 2 guys don't need knee replacements yet. Yes. They're going to lose weight, going to improve things, and they might come back to me in a year or 2. Yeah. And so that's the practical side of it. But you know, there you see it. Here's the biochemistry. Here's the results. And here are the vested interests that are stopping that from coming out. Yeah. I've gone into diabetes meetings. You know, I've gone into a Coca-Cola meeting. That was fun. Yeah. And what was interesting, I can get up at those meetings, and I'm not doing this for ego or anything. And I say it's Dr. Gary Fettke from Tasmania, and the vast majority of the audience turn around, going, "Oh, here comes the bomb. Here comes the missile." Yeah, yeah. And I don't mean to go to these meetings to launch missiles, but I go to those meetings to launch missiles. You know, just there's this. When you realize how much, excuse the language for everyone, bullshit we've been fed, yeah. We're told to continue on. Yeah. I'm not one for sitting down and taking it. Yeah. And when you see it in your patient, I mean, I watch patients, I look at them all the time. I talk to them every day. There's so much confusion out there.
Yeah.
And it's deliberate misinformation,
Yeah.
disinformation. It's propaganda, which is propping up industries, sickness industry, and whatever. And I know I'm not paranoid. I suffer from hyperpragmatism. So this is what's going down.
Yes.
What are we going to do about it? You can do something. And if you're waiting for the system to change, you can't. But you as an individual can change everything today.
Yeah.
You are the only person who's got control over what you're going to eat today,
Yeah.
or what you're not going to eat. Or if you're going to fast, you can do any of that.
Yeah.
Nobody can take that away from you. You may have limited choices depending on your social circumstances, but you have control. And again, that's about self-empowerment for people. And if you give people that moment where they can decide what they want to do, COVID's a classic example where everything's out of control in people's lives. I often say to people, they're down a deep, dark well.
Yeah.
You've got economic pressures, you've got work pressures, you've got family pressures. You don't know where, if you're going to have a job next year. You're worried about going outside because of COVID. You're worrying about going outside without a mask because you're going to get arrested.
Yep.
The one thing you've got control over is, I'm going to put a ladder down into that well, and you decide what to eat or not eat.
Yeah.
And I've rewritten the dietary guidelines for the world. I realized, I'm an orthopedic surgeon. We're supposed to have big egos and all that sort of thing. And we do back ourselves, but the dietary guidelines I've rewritten is that we should, and it's in one sentence, eat fresh, local, seasonal, whole food.
Yeah.
Based on your cultural beliefs and environment.
Yeah.
Reducing added sugar and processed food.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That is in fact keto.
Yeah.
Low carb.
Yeah.
It will in fact turn around most modern disease. It will have major ramifications on our pharmaceutical requirements.
Yeah.
It will reduce processed food. That one sentence has massive ramifications for both the sickness industry and the vested interests. And that's what gets me into trouble, because I'm vocalizing it.
Of course it does. Of course it does. Yeah.
But nobody knows where Tasmania is, so I'm hard to find.
And I mean, behind you, there's a wonderful image, and I'm sure everyone's going to, I've been looking at it since you came on. But so it's that journey of man, then the pig. I mean, at what point we're all on a journey, and not everybody ends up like the guy, behind you with the soda pop or the beer, whatever he's drinking, with that huge gut, or that huge belly. Is there obviously what you're basically saying is for all of us not to get down the road and get these modern diseases that are killing us and are very unpleasant. At some point, you've got a choice of, do you continue down that road or do you turn back? Do you think is there a tipping point for most of us, do you think? Is there anything we should be looking at or observing, or is it just a case of, look, if you can make a change in 12 hours, then maybe we can just start anytime? Or do you think there is a kind of tipping point for most people that have got to say, you've got a serious choice now?
Oh, look, we've all been 20 and 30 and invincible.
Yes.
And then there's one day when you realize, oh, hang on, actually, I'm not that well. I'm not as well as I used to be. I can't hit the golf ball as far as I used to be. I'm not as strong as I used to be.
Yeah.
I went to the CrossFit Games a few years ago, and we all get old at 35, okay?
Yeah.
The CrossFit, it was a wonderful experience. Got to give a great talk at the CrossFit Games.
Yeah.
But you realize actually we do get old, but we don't have to be old and unwell. We can be old and well. We're all going to die.
Yeah.
I've got a guy in his 90s that decided to go low carb keto so he could do more bushwalking.
Seriously, he was 90 when he went low carb.
93. Okay.
Fantastic.
So and he could. And he said, I got more energy now. I'm more sprightly. I don't hurt as much. I want to do anyway, so I could do more bushwalking. So age is no barrier.
Yeah.
Keto is safe in pregnancy. Well, that'll get me into trouble, but I can prove that.
Yeah.
I can prove that easily, with actually morning sickness. The worse your morning sickness, the more likely you are to be in ketosis, and the healthier your baby will be.
Wow.
The more gestational diabetes you have, which is poor blood glucose control, the sicker your baby will be, and you will be as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've put all that data together.
Yeah.
Again, coming back to that most recent talk, but it's been on dwelling and totally related to that picture behind us.
Yeah.
For 2.5 million years, man has evolved to get to the top of the food chain.
Right. Yeah.
With the introduction of the agricultural revolution, just in a blink of an eye, which is only 10,000 years ago, maybe 12, but let's say 10,000 years, we've introduced carbohydrate in excess.
Yeah.
I can make an argument that carbohydrate starts damaging, that glucose starts damaging the glycocalyx, the lining of the blood vessels. It becomes oxidized in our tissues under the effect of body heat.
Yeah.
It becomes called what's the Maillard reaction. It becomes our browning of tissues, our toasting. It has an insulin resistance effect. So since the onset of the agricultural revolution, we've actually introduced modern disease.
Yeah.
And in the last 100 years, with more processing, and particularly the last 50 to 70 years with processed seed oils, we've introduced inflammation in extraordinary amounts. So I'll often say that sugar, the fructose and the glucose is the kindling of the fire. The seed oils, the polyunsaturated seed oils, are the match.
Right. Right.
I can't summarize it easier than that. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard you talk about toasting before. Can you maybe share that with the group?
Yeah, everyone knows toasting. You get a piece of bread, stick it in the toaster,
Yep.
and that's actually called the Maillard reaction.
Right.
Maillard. You can look it up.
Yeah.
What happens is when you get a piece of toast, you put it in the toaster and you heat it, the glucose in there heats up and attaches to the protein. It's called glycation of protein.
Okay.
Under the effect of body heat.
Yeah.
And then it goes brown, gets a bit hard, toasted.
Yeah.
When your blood glucose goes up above a normal level, 5 millimoles,
Yeah.
your tissue glucose goes up, and under the effect of body heat, the glucose combines with the protein and glycates them and toasts them. So every time someone with diabetes, their blood glucose spikes, everyone, which is 80, 90% of people, not 5 or 10%, we've all, 80, 90% of people are now, insulin resistant, and on a Kraft insulin assay are probably positive.
Wow.
So every time you spike your blood glucose, you are toasting your tissues. You're toasting your eyes, your brain, your kidneys, your liver, your skin, your vessels, your heart. Every single time. It's like just, a water torture, tiny bits.
Yeah.
And over a lifetime. So what's the tipping point? It's the tipping point when you realize those advanced glycation end products have gotten the better of you.
Yeah.
When you look inside, this is one of the fascinating things in the last 12 months I've found, is that when you look at cartilage and tissue and tendons in the body, a lot of people have had tendonitis, a lot of people got a bit of wear and tear in joints. The damaging material within the cartilage and tendons is actually the end products of carbohydrate metabolism.
Wow.
It's not protein metabolism or fat metabolism. It's advanced glycation end products. It's metalloproteinases. It's carbs. And if you look at the skeletons of pre-agricultural revolution humans, so more than 10,000 years ago, arthritis was very uncommon. You look at the skeletons that follow on, all of a sudden you start seeing those cartilage. So I'm not saying we should go back to pre-agricultural revolutionary times.
No.
But let's recognize what came with that period of time. Civilization came with it. Security came with it. Our ability to store food and move it around. But when we have that in excess comes problems. Unfortunately, that excess might be surprisingly small. And that's mimicked by what we're seeing with modern disease, diabetes out of control, obesity out of control, insulin resistance, and all the complications of a hyperinsulinemic state. All I'm saying is the biochemistry is let's reduce that kindling in the fire.
Yeah.
Let's reduce the seed oil component, which creates that is the kicker.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you see what happens for yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got your own health journey. I've got my health journey. The advent of social media, we've got millions and millions of social, personal journeys.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. So maybe you mentioned COVID there just a while ago.
What's that?
Yes, I'd be interested to see what you might want to say about that. But I can only imagine you've got to be careful about what you say all the time now. But then again, you're an outlier. So what's your thing about COVID in terms of us? I mean, you hear, various authorities saying things like, it's just going to be there forever now. It's just going to stay around, or sooner or later we're going to confront it. Each of us will come, if it's not that, it'll be the next one. But the point is, if we're going to confront it at some point or be in contact with it, what's your thinking about the best way to maximize a positive outcome?
This all comes back to antibiotics, antivirals, vaccines, and whatever.
Yeah.
Our body is full of bacteria in our gut, from our mouth to the other end, completely full. It's one of the small miracles. We carry around this toxic load, and we're not dead all the time. Our skin's covered in bacteria. We live with it.
Yes.
We've evolved over a period of time. Who was here first, the bacteria or the humans?
Yeah. Yeah.
We've had antibiotics around for about 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
We see that the bacteria are constantly evolving with resistance. Who's going to win?
Yeah.
Okay, bacteria are going to win. Okay, we can't. So therefore, this is about improving the host immunity. We've learnt to live with all the bacteria in our gut and in our skin. The vast majority of infections that are out of control are based or related to the host being immunocompromised.
Yeah.
So this is about improving our host immunity as the most important thing. And there's good data now that if you're overweight, obese, diabetes, hypertension, unwell, old, which generally means you've got other stuff going on.
Yeah.
And I'll argue they're metabolically unwell on the inside because of chronic low-grade inflammation. Then yes, your host is immunocompromised.
Yeah.
If you eat sugar, one of the byproducts of that, of fructose metabolism, is uric acid. Uric acid inhibits nitric oxidase, which inhibits your neutrophil function, your white cell function.
Right.
Alcohol and uric acid both inhibit T cell lymphocyte. So one of the things about T cells are the first line of defense against the coronavirus.
Right.
So they're the very first line. And now alcohol directly inhibits their function.
Wow.
So you would not ask your first line of defense, your elite soldiers, to go into war drunk. And yet we have public health authorities. I'm yet to hear of a single public health authority saying stop drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
Keep the alcohol line free.
Yeah.
Keep people so that they can drink to their whatever they want. So alcohol consumption has gone up in COVID right across the world. People are drinking at home. Domestic violence has gone up. But from a COVID protection point of view, your immunity goes down. Guess what? Sugar, carbs get converted to aldehyde, get converted to alcohol in the liver. So what have we done in COVID? Okay, we keep people having junk food, more processed food.
Yeah.
So that are the measures. So here we've got a dietary intake of alcohol, sugar, and carbs, which actually reduce your immunity.
Yeah.
We know that the complications of that, obesity, diabetes, hypertension, are actually reduce your immunity. If you're medicated, which is particularly the ACE inhibitor or diabetes drugs, that seems to be creating a bit of an entry point for the virus via the ACE receptor.
Okay.
So that's why I think some of these countries which have got, the other thing is you need cholesterol to actually have your immune function running along effectively. So if you're on a cholesterol lowering agent, you're reducing your immunity. I mean, it's just over and over. There's stuff that we have control over.
Yeah.
So where does the vaccine come into that? Well, that's another whole story. But unless we get our host immunity up, not just for this virus, but for the next virus and the one after that.
Exactly.
And we need to get our exercise. We need to get our vitamin D exposure. We need our sunlight exposure. They are the critical things which I see as central to our ongoing existence with this virus or the next. I mean, I do have a commercial interest. I did do, and I'll plug it right now, okay? Last year, I started a thing called coppershield.com.au.
All right, interesting.
Copper, pure copper, kills every virus and bacteria. So I've come up with a wrap for a handle that you could put on a door and a push plate that you can put on a door. So you can retrofit, or like we've had it on our fridge door handles for nearly a year.
This is spooky. This is amazing. Anyway, on you go.
No, but literally. So therefore, we've known that the benefits of copper are there. Yeah. Copper's been there. Gladiators put it in their wounds 1,000 years ago. It's in your hot water service at home because it kills bacteria and viruses. Yeah. It kills coronavirus literally on contact, and certainly is sterile within a couple of hours. I'm advertising, but I don't spend a lot of time inside the box. So last year, in the midst of the coronavirus and lockdown, I thought, well, why don't we just put copper on everything?
My goodness, this is
and kill it. Yeah. So I'm not worried about coronavirus coming because I'm going to kill it before it gets to me. It's on my front door handle. It's on my door handles in my office. So therefore, you can literally put your handle, grab hold of it, and then I can come along after it and not get worried about getting coronavirus. So this is, why don't we, like Grand Central Station, the handles on it are all copper.
Yeah.
The Spanish flu, particularly a lot in South America, they put copper on things. You've got brass handles. Brass, copper has been used for centuries or millennia to avoid infections. Hospitals that actually put copper stuff into their environment reduce infection rates. So we've got all this basic stuff, which allows us to live with the next bacteria, the next virus. Let's sort out our host immunity. Let's sort out our environment. It's not just about washing your hands and wearing a mask, all important because it raises awareness of reducing transmission.
Yeah.
But the critical thing is your host and your environment.
Yeah.
And that's where I've spent my energy in the last 12 months is, I'm going to look after myself. I'm not a teetotaler, but I've had I lie. I've had 2 glasses of wine in the last 12 months.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose the question, I know where people are going, myself included, I was going to go downstairs to have a glass of wine, watch the telly, go to bed. Yeah. And now I'm thinking, oh, well, I better not do that. I mean, are you saying that, a glass of wine at the weekend could be dodgy, or, I mean, I don't want to push you generally, but do you think even that's risky in the light of COVID?
Well, you're reducing your T cell response.
Yeah.
Okay.
Enough said.
The more you drink, the longer period of time you're going to have your reduced T cell response.
Yeah.
I don't make this stuff up. It's just there.
No. Can I ask for the audience here? They will know that last week's thing on the Wednesday night, it was just me, and I was talking about my journey, and part of it was
this is hot water, by the way.
That's cool. And I was talking about, this is why it's so spooky, I was talking about copper plates and zinc plates and lying on them and things like that. It's a story. But for the audience watching this now, when they're watching it, this is too big a coincidence. It's too big a coincidence because we've been following coincidences all the time over this year with this program. So can you tell us what the name of that website is again? Because this copper thing is quite exciting, really.
No, it's a no-brainer
to you, but we're just hearing it, so
I know. But
So
yeah, it's
what's the
Copper
website?
Shield.
I know you don't want to advertise it. Tell us what the website is again.
Yeah, okay. Well, I haven't made any money out of nutrition, and if I just get my money back on the copper, that'll be fun.
Okay.
Yeah, coppershield.com.au.
Coppershield.au. Fantastic.
Again, it's like, okay, I recognize I'm a bit OCD or a lot OCD, but when you actually start traveling down a rabbit warren,
Yeah.
and like I started on this copper thing, I went, there's hundreds of papers on it,
Yeah.
but nobody's worked out how to put a copper wrap on a handle.
Yes.
Now that's where I've just taken the copper concept and I went, oh look, this is what we can put on a door.
Yeah.
When you watch people go through doorways now, there's enormous fear about how do you open a door, push through a door, which wasn't there a year ago.
Yeah.
And yet we can actually put something on it and stop it.
Yeah, but I'm thinking, I mean, there's over the years, when I was much younger, there was lots of copper sort of plates that you would push the door up, wasn't there? I mean, they were about everywhere.
Yeah, copper and brass have been around, but the trouble is it marks.
Yes.
So therefore people think, oh, that it marks and it requires a bit of labor to clean it. Yeah. So let's put everything stainless steel, which harbors coronavirus for days.
Yes.
Or we could put copper on it, which actually kills it on contact.
Fantastic.
But again, it's just simple. Like a lot of the stuff I do is just simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'd like to base it on biochemistry.
Yeah. So I'm aware of time again. So in terms of healthy lifespan, I take it you're more or less saying the same thing. It's like stay on the low carb, stay keto, keep away from the alcohol, keep away from the sugar. Is there anything else you're considering for longevity?
Oh, look, I think I'm more for, I believe in stretching rather than strengthening.
Okay.
I mean, core exercises are important.
Yeah.
But hand in hand with that, we should be doing more stretching.
Yeah.
Look, relationships are important.
Yeah.
I gave a talk on something like this a few years ago. I'm trying to remember it all now. But in fact, it's about having a good relationship, good food, good family, good environment. And that's difficult for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But to actually have an awareness that you're going to be working towards those objectives is actually our aim in life, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm very fortunate that we decided to come to Tasmania. People said, "Oh, were you sent to there? It's like originally a penal colony." All the best people have left Europe, by the way. Might have been a couple of 100 years ago, but we're very fortunate. I live on some acreage. We've got our chickens. I've got sheep out the front.
Nice.
I do have my gun license. I quite jokingly say I've got my gun license. I can do hunter gathering modern hunter gathering. But I do say to my patients sometimes, I actually have the full gambit of options available to you in your care. Don't tell the gun licensing board that one, okay? But I've never used it on my patients. But I sort of say to them, look, ultimately, I thought it was a note to sort of finish on. We've got a lot more control of our health outcomes, our longevity, if we want.
Yeah.
And I'd rather good health rather than having, and I don't call sugar a treat anymore. And I used to be a sugar addict, okay? Completely addicted to the stuff.
Yeah.
As a kid. I don't see it as a treat. Every time I look at a piece of bread or I walk past a bakery, I see that Maillard reaction.
Yes.
And I go, that Maillard reaction's happened to that piece of bread or pastry. I don't want it to happen to my brain.
Amazing.
I don't want it to happen to my children's brains or my grandchildren's brains. Well, we've got a couple of grandchildren. We've got 7 in the house. We've had that for several months now with lockdown and the kids have come home. So it's a busy house, but I watch my low carb
Yeah.
grandchildren. I've watched our daughter run low carb through pregnancies.
Wow.
They're really healthy.
Yeah.
Well, I can't say that it's the best thing to raise kids on. I think it is,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
can say it's certainly not doing any harm.
No. No.
So I think it's got a role to play. Look, eating good, living well, eating well, family support. That is longevity. It doesn't matter if it's 10 years, 20 years, 100 years.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
We're
Do
all going to die. You
yeah,
can't get
exactly.
out of that.
No, no, exactly. Are you, do you practice fasting, intermittent fasting, or do you just like eat when you're hungry? How does it work, that stuff for you?
To me, I like eating.
Nice.
When I eat, it's very low carb.
Yeah.
I tend to eat when I'm hungry, stop when I'm full.
Yeah.
One of the things, despite 7 in the house, our kitchen's being used all the time. Like Belinda and I, we generally eat together, but often we don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll come home and she said, "Oh, I've eaten." I'll go, "Fine," and I'll eat, and we'll be together.
Yeah.
But we're not fussed if the other one's eating or not eating.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's a whole different mindset. I have traditionally had very long days at work. I like breakfast in the morning.
Yeah.
I like breaking my fast in the morning. Everyone asks me what I have for breakfast. I don't know why they're so interested, but it's just it's simple. Last night's meat and veg in an omelette ring,
Yeah.
egg, cheese, and I've got a cooked breakfast. Here's something about Belinda. Do not talk to her in the morning without a cup of tea. So I put the kettle on, I make my omelette, and by the time I make 1 cup of tea, I've got a cooked breakfast. That and a handful of nuts, and then I'll go all day on that.
Yeah.
And then we'll have. We're not fancy cooks. Belinda can cook fabulously, but we eat simple fare.
Simple stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
We have meatball Mondays that last till Thursdays. Buy the cheap mince. It's not as though we're having eye fillets.
No.
It's it's literally get that.
And are
whole
you
food
in your work? Are you attracting people who want, patients and stuff who want to know more about how to look after
Oh,
themselves?
absolutely. So part of that's been a bit of a trouble in the hospital when they come to hospital and they want food. So I've been able to negotiate some lower carb options, but
Yeah.
it's taken 10 years in the private hospital system, and the public hospital is still a write-off.
Yes.
But so I have patients who have, generally low carb. Guess what? Anecdotally, if you're low carb keto, you have less pain post-operatively.
Oh, nice.
You seem to get better quicker. I can make the argument of how that is, but that biochemically it makes sense. If you're running ketones, you're in a less inflamed state. You heal a bit better. The fasting state is better for healing, better for immunity. There's a good argument. In fact, after surgery, we should fast for 72 hours.
Wow.
And you already know that because your dog and cat, when it's sick, an animal when it's sick just lies in the corner.
Yeah.
Moves into a state of ketosis.
Yeah.
By definition.
Yeah.
Drinks a bit of fluid, and then when it feels better, it gets up and gets going.
Yeah.
It's only humans that go to hospital and have all this chocolate biscuits and white bread and sandwiches and orange juice straight after an anesthetic.
Amazing.
But so my patients, first of all, a lot of my patients don't need surgery.
No.
I've got a colleague in Queensland who is a shoulder surgeon, and every time he books someone for surgery, he says he books them 6 weeks in advance.
Right.
Encourages them to go low carb keto. Half of them cancel their surgery in 6 weeks.
It's amazing.
To the point that he says he needs to sort of double book his lists.
Yeah.
Because he knows half of them are going to cancel.
Yeah.
So he's come on board with it, and so again, you can't. Why aren't we doing this with all of our patients all of the time? I think we do far too much knee replacement surgery in particular.
Yeah.
Overweight, younger patients, more and more women. When if they went low carb keto, they'll have a reduction in weight, reduction in load, reduction in symptoms, and then when they do need surgery, they'll get better outcomes.
Amazing.
These are disasters that are going to be confronting the next generation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Putting implants into people too heavy. It's just.
I'm aware of the time. I just want to maybe help you if I can, since you've been so helpful sharing your time here. I know that you co-authored Lies My Doctor Told Me. Is there any other books you've got out there, and or anything you've got on?
I didn't co-author it. I just Ken asked me to kindly write the foreword for it, and it's been good fun actually writing forewords for people.
Yes.
And supporting them. Zoe Harkham's work as well, Seem Malhotra, Tim Noakes and Marika Sorbis. I don't want to write a book. I want Belinda to write hers.
Her book would be amazing, yeah.
My book's biochemistry, and it's not biochemistry. It's there already. I mean, it's really simple. I think my talks are on YouTube because it's important that people can see that.
Yes.
I can track you as today. I go down so many different pathways. I wouldn't know where to start with another book. But Belinda's book about the vested interest, which is shaping the disinformation, that's the one that needs to be written.
Indeed. And are you on any of this sort of? There's a lot of, I keep hearing in my listening to podcasts, there's a lot, apparently more and more really good films coming along, or documentaries. Is there any that you're starring in?
I don't think anybody from Tasmania stars in anything. I was in Fat documentary. I've been involved in a couple of Donald O'Neill's ones, supporting him. Food Lies is coming out.
Yep.
Look, I'm as photogenic as a brick.
But you got a lovely voice.
I'm supporting a lot of people. To be fair, I see my role now in continuing the message.
Yeah.
And supporting those young voices that are needing to stand up.
Yeah.
And if people get into a bit of trouble with the system, to give me a holler, because so I do a lot of mentoring work.
Yeah.
And I don't need to be in front of a camera. We're having a chat now, but I want other doctors, health professionals, to stand up without fear.
Yeah.
And that'll be a conversation I have every single week.
Is that right?
With someone. Yeah. Might be a phone call, might be a Skype, might be a Zoom or whatever. Yeah. I want to support the next generation.
Yeah.
Because I do. I don't. This is too important. There's a movement out there that needs to be supported. Yes. I can reach a certain number of people. There's a podcast called Two Keto Dudes.
I love it. Yeah. I heard you on there, and you blew me away with the.
I didn't realize. I didn't realize that I had been partly responsible for starting that.
Is that right?
And that they got together because they'd heard me talk.
Yeah.
And then they said, and their message is to get someone to listen to it, and to get them to get two people to talk to listen to it again.
Exactly.
But I didn't realize that I was there at the beginning of it, and they'd come to hear me talk in Melbourne, or actually, I've got a blank. Andrew rang up Carl and said, "We've got to do this."
Yeah.
They told me about it, and I was just, "Oh, really? Okay." So that's inspirational, because that's a message way beyond. It's a bit like Twitter.
Yeah.
That message goes way beyond my doorstep.
Yeah. No, and absolutely. Can I say this? I mean, if you're ever in touch with either of them, you can say we're all desperately waiting on them coming back.
Yeah, look, I think what's happened with is that they've gotten busy with other projects, as we all do.
Exactly, but I just love those two guys. Listen to them. I've listened to every one of them. They're just amazing. Yeah, but that's how I heard you. That's how I heard you the first time. So, But listen, I realise you've got to rush. But is there anything else you'd like to use parting words for our group so that you might inspire them?
Well, I don't think I say anything. It's inspirational. Yeah, find a good woman, stick with her. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Good man.
Look, just be honest and pure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I often get patients that say to me, "Oh, you said this, 20 years ago," and I say, "Well, I probably did. It was obviously something quite random that they remember." And I'll take something from. Ronald Reagan once said, and he wrote a lot of stuff down, but he once said that he wasn't smart enough to lie.
Yes. Yes.
So if someone comes back to me and challenges me about something that I've said today with having a chat to you,
Yeah.
I didn't lie. This stuff, I can back every single thing over.
Exactly.
So when I say to patients, you have to do this, or this is my opinion, I'm not lying. Sometimes it's considered as too blunt.
Yes. Yes.
Too in your face.
Yeah.
But if you just tell the truth, you don't need to try and remember the lie.
Exactly. Exactly.
And again, I'll take something, someone just reminded me of something that from the end of my fruit talk, which is on YouTube.
Yeah.
That it's easier to deceive people than to convince them that they've been deceived.
Say that again.
It's easier to deceive people
Yeah.
than to convince them that they've been deceived.
Yes, indeed. 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 Yeah.
And then I'll take the plug for my old book called Inversion. The last thing there is only dead fish swim with the current.
Yes. Yes.
All right. So I do live by that one.
Yes. Yes.
And it's far more fun, interesting, exciting to swim against the current.
Wow.
And that if you're after a final, few words, then only dead fish swim with the current.
Super.
And,
Fantastic, Gary. Gary, thanks for giving us your time, especially early on a Saturday morning. We're really grateful. Really grateful.
no, that's fine.
On behalf of our group, can I just wish you every success, everything you're doing, and you keep going, and you continue to inspire people as you've done for me. And our group's going to love this. So thanks a lot.
Oh, it's good fun.
Cheers. Bye now.
Yes,
Give our regards to Belinda.
No, I'll give her more than that.